Today I'm going to talk about a subject that often gets ignored. It's not a very popular subject. In fact, I can't recall seeing a video actually dedicated to this topic. But I was actually going through this process myself recently and thought it would be good for me to talk about it and be very open and honest and share kind of a dark part of the hobby that people don't often really want to discuss, and share it with all of you. Hey fish friends, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Zenzo from Tozawa Tanks. So the subject of what I want to talk about is culling. Culling is the process of basically I'm trying to be tactful here in my description of what it is, but basically what you're doing is you are going through the act of thinning out a fish population by terminating the lives of those fish for a particular reason. Now, culling is something that's common. It might be common in agriculture if you are growing a strain of a protein, an animal protein, and you notice a problem, you might have to cull them. You might have to cull them if there's a disease. You might have to cull them if there's a supply and demand issue, which we're going through right now, and processing plants, etc. So basically what it means is you are taking a population of your animal and you're either thinning those down or you're eradicating them for a reason. Now, oftentimes if you breed fish, if you're a fish breeder, then you are very familiar with this process, and that is, as you're breeding and you're selectively breeding, you might see a fish that doesn't display the traits that you need to further the line, to further the look or the genetics of that fish, or it might be something that's deformed or has the wrong color, and so you need to move that fish along. In my case, I don't like culling fish unless I feel that it's absolutely necessary. If I feel that that fish living is going to be a detriment to the overall population. If there's a situation where, let's say, there's a female fish or females that aren't colorful and I don't want them, or if it's a situation where, there's just a fish that's, for some reason or another, I feel it needs to get put down, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to find another option, find another home, give the fish away, etc. But in this situation that I was going through the other day, I actually had to make the decision to cull these fish, and those were my shell dwellers. Now, I love my shell dwellers. I've got 4 tanks with Neolamprologus multifasciatus. I've got a tank with gold ocellatus, so I love shell dwellers. What I noticed is in one of my secondary tanks, so upstairs I've got my main display tank, upstairs my Tanganyikan tank, and then down here I've got kind of a secondary display tank and then a couple kind of overflow breeding tanks or holding tanks. And what I noticed several months ago was that there were a few fish that had like a deformity on the face, and it was kind of like this growth on the chin, and it looked odd, was not good, and I just didn't really bother. And then I noticed it was kind of getting more and more prevalent as the generations continued, and I realized that I had a problem where this deformity was being passed on to future generations. And this deformity, not only is it not good for the fish as far as selling it or giving it away because it's deformed, but it could have some other negative effects down the road for those fish trying to eat. And obviously you don't want fish that are deformed to continue to breed and then pass that trait on. So what I did is I went through my tanks and tried to identify all of the fish that had this growth. It's very distinct, and I don't have any B-roll of it because I already went through all the tanks and caught those fish. But basically, at the bottom jaw area, there was like this giant, not a pimple, but just like a large growth at the bottom of their chin, essentially. And it was very unsightly and could have had some problems down the road. So I would catch those fish and then humanely dispose of those fish. And now, going through and looking at all of my fish, I haven't seen any more. Hopefully I caught them all. There is a possibility that that genetic defect is still in some of the fish, so I'm gonna have to look at future generations and even eggs that might have not hatched yet, and just make sure that that has been eradicated. So that's going to be something that I'm going to be focused on, and it's not a great topic to talk about. It's not something that I'm very proud of sharing, and I don't want to tell you about my deformed baby fish, but that is the reality. And oftentimes, if you are breeding fish, or if you're thinking about breeding fish or getting into it, that is something that you are going to have to deal with at some point. Now, as far as culling, there are multiple methods, and I don't want to tell you which one is best or which ones to avoid. Everyone's going to have their opinions. Whatever decision that you choose as far as how you cull a fish, I would just please ask that you do it in a humane fashion, or as humanely as possible and as painless as possible to your fish. There might be, you know, a situation where you can euthanize your fish using clove oil. I've done that. Some people have recommended, you know, putting a fish in a cold environment and basically having the fish go to sleep and freezing it. Some people, you know, think about just doing a quick cut and severing the nervous system, or you could also feed it to your fish. So if you have like larger, you know, predatory fish, like an Oscar as an example, and if you have some small fish to get rid of, that is another option. So not really want to don't want to get into really how I do it. It's kind of gruesome, and not that I do anything gruesome, it's just not a fun topic to talk about. But there are options on how to cull, and the way that you do it will have to, you know, depend on kind of, you know, your situation and what fish you have, and the resources that you have to handle that. So anyway, that is the truth. I do try to be as transparent as possible and not just, you know, make it sound like everything is, you know, all golden and rosy all the time, because the reality is sometimes things just don't work out well, and I have to deal with those. So I would love to read down below in the comments what you've done in this situation. Have you had to cull fish? Please don't, you know, get descriptive and say that you did this or did that, and we don't need to read that. We understand there's lots of ways of culling a fish, but I would love to understand or read if that's something that you have had to do, if you've had to cull fish, and for what reasons. And you know, maybe this is controversial. Maybe people will be very adamant about not doing this and think that it's wrong. But and I can understand your position as well if that's the way that you feel. Maybe you believe that all creatures should be alive and have an opportunity to live regardless of how they're deformed or whatever. But anyway, in my situation, there was a deformity that was significant. It wasn't just like one or two fish that were deformed, and I've dealt with that before, and I've had, you know, funky deformed fish, and I have no problem letting them continue on living. But when it's something that I see as being a genetic defect that's passing on to future generations, then definitely I want to get ahead of that. So anyway, that is all I had on this subject. I've been thinking about, you know, should I make this video? Actually been thinking about it for a week or two. Should I make this video? Should I not make this video? And I thought, what the heck? Be transparent, you know, and tell the truth to you guys, and hopefully you will maybe benefit from this information. So anyway, thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.